Hello, this is Sarah from Start, and today I'm going to be showing you how to decoupage a drawer. So it doesn't have to be a drawer, it could be a cupboard or a picture frame or anything else wooden. So here's one I made earlier. I have quite a tropical theme in my living room, so I've gone for tropical patterns. These are what the drawers were like before. This is a slightly larger one. So the first thing to do is to prep the surface. You don't need to sand it or prime it, but you do need to make it all one pale uniform colour. So I'm going to use this So Crafty chalk paint, and I'm using a pale grey colour. It could be white or cream. Yeah, white, cream or grey is best, just so it's a nice uniform pale colour underneath the paper. So I'm going to go ahead and paint the drawer. Now I'm going to be quite careful, and this paint takes a little while to dry, so I'm not going to use masking tape. If I was going to, I'd probably use something like this just to mask off the metal drawer handle, or if I wanted to be really good, I'd remove it. It screws on the inside, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to be careful and paint around it. You can choose to mask off or remove the handle if you wish. So for the chalky paint, I'm using a medium-sized brush, which will enable me to get in nice and close without getting too much paint on the handle. If I do get any on like that, I'm just going to wipe it off with a clean finger. That should be okay. So you want to cover all of the front of your drawer in chalk paint. If you haven't got chalk paint, then probably some pale coloured emulsion would do, or probably even a pale coloured acrylic paint would be fine. I wouldn't go for an oil based paint or a solvent based paint like gloss, because I'm not sure how it would react with the glue that we're going to use and also the paper. You might get some yellowing or some kind of oily residue or solvent residue seeping through. So best go for water based paint or a plastic based paint. You also want to make sure that if there's a beveled edge like this, that you just catch the end of that, because we're going to paper over that as well. Okay, so I finished painting the front of my drawer. I don't know if you can see, but it's quite a thin layer of paint. It's not mega even. You can see the brush strokes in the paint, but that's fine because we're going to be papering over it. It's just to give more of an even base to the drawer, an even colour and base. Okay, so you want to leave that to dry for around 3 to 4 hours, or however long it says on your paint tin. This one says 4 hours, so I'm going to leave that to dry. and move on to one I started yesterday. So here is one I started yesterday, so that's all completely dry now. Now for this one I haven't used decoupage paper, I've used some napkins that I bought especially for this project. So I'll show you how to do those. These are the napkins. They're just normal napkins, but a really nice pattern. I actually bought these off eBay, especially for this project. They were quite expensive for napkins, but they were exactly what I wanted, so I didn't mind. Now with napkins, you don't need to do this with proper decoupage paper, but because it's a napkin, you just need to be aware that it's got printing on there, so we want to make sure we don't use that, so I'll get rid of that bit. But the main difference is napkins usually come in a few different layers, so we want to peel off the main backing layer. Helps if you've got nails for this. So we're just taking off that whole layer of extra tissue that we don't need. You could put that to one side and use that to dab off any excess glue that you might have later. And then I'm going to rip off, because I know I definitely don't want to accidentally use it, that bit of text. So with this napkin and with many napkins, they often have quite an embossed finish, so raised braille type bumps. You may want that effect for your piece, but you may not. So if you want to get rid of it when you're gluing it on, you just want to use a stippling action with the paintbrush. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So you can see the grey paint still showing through on these bits where I haven't done yet. So they're the bits I'm going to cover now. So you want to get a paintbrush and move to the gluing stage. So I'm using Mod Podge glue. You could use PVA, but it doesn't give as good an effect. So this is good, you can buy it online or in craft shops. And this is the gloss one. I think you can get matte ones as well. This doesn't give as good a gloss as I'd like. I like it quite glossy, so I'm going to also apply an actual decoupage gloss at the end to make it a bit more hard wearing, because these are drawers that we use every day, so you want to make sure you don't get bits peeling off, and also to give a nice glossy finish. So you want to use quite a good amount of this, but not so much that it leaves sort of lumps and bumps. So I'll just show you what I mean. It does dry really quickly, especially if it's a warm dry room like this is. So you need to work quite quickly. And if I was doing this whole drawer, I'd be tempted, it is quite tempting to cover the whole thing in glue and then lay your pieces on, but you'll find that after a few minutes it starts to dry, so you'll just need to add more anyway. So just work a bit at a time, and then work out how big you want your piece to be. I wouldn't do hundreds and hundreds of tiny pieces, because aside from the fact that it'll take you ages, you'll also see you'll lose the actual design if there's quite big pictures like there is on this, and you'll also just see loads of joins everywhere, which isn't great. So I'm using the bits that's already a straight edge from the top of the napkin to butt up against the handle of the drawer, and I'm just pressing it down into the glue, making sure it's fairly straight. Probably don't need that extra bit there. I've just taken a bit of the design off, so I'll just carefully stick that back on. Just put a bit of glue on my finger. Work out where it was there. There we go. And then once you've got your piece in place, you want to go over it with another layer of Mod Podge glue. Not tons and tons, it doesn't want to be swimming in it. You want some, and that'll soak into the napkin and just make it a really strong bond and surface. And then the stippling action I mentioned earlier, it's where you get your brush vertical like that and just sort of stipple and scrub it down into the, not, you want to do it quite firmly but also gently, and it just helps to get rid of some of those raised bumps. So we'll do another bit. So again, I've got a bit of an edge there, so I'm going to put that there. Okay, and then when you've done the whole thing and you're happy with it, you want to leave it to dry again for several hours. I'm not sure this says how long to leave it for. Actually, this says in 20 minutes it'll be dry, but just have a little look. If it still looks a bit white, or sometimes it has a bluish tone to it, it's probably still a bit wet. So to be safe, I'd leave it at least an hour. And then you can use your varnish. So I've got a couple of varnishes that I like. I've got this one. Doesn't say whether it's a gloss or a matte. I think it might be a matte. So I'm going to go for this one, which is definitely a gloss. And again, you're looking for quite a nice even layer, not too much so that it goes really gloopy and sticky, but do want to make sure. So about like that should be fine. So remember, this is a bit that I did earlier and I've let it dry overnight. I'm not going to touch these bits that I've just stuck down now. And then when you've done the whole drawer, you would just again leave that to dry. Try and make sure that you cover off these edge bits if you've papered these beveled bits. So that's with the napkin. Here's one I again did yesterday. This is with decoupage paper, so it's using the same glue and the same varnish on top. And instead of a paper napkin, I've used special decoupage paper, which again can be a bit pricey, but you can get really, really nice designs. And it's a bit like a slightly thicker tissue paper. Like a good quality tissue paper that you might use to wrap a present. So like a bit thicker, got a bit of a sheen, a gloss to the front of it, not to the back. The back's still matte. And you just use the same process really. So that's the packet that paper came in. So just ripping off small pieces and gluing them on. I don't know if you can see on there, I think you can. There are some places where I've maybe put a lot of glue on and it's wrinkled a bit. You can see some of the overlapping, some of the ripped edges, but that's kind of what decoupage is all about. It's not meant to look perfect or like you've printed onto the wood or like a painting. It's meant to look like it's something different on the surface. And then finally, once you've taken everything off, I found with this one, I did use masking tape to mask off the handle, but I found that there was still a sort of pale bit next to the handle that I hadn't managed to get with either the paint or the paper. So I got a dark coloured permanent pen. It was a black pen, and I just very neatly and carefully went around the edge, just so it was a darker colour to neaten it up a bit. So you didn't see any gaps between the paper and the handle. Okay, and that's it. Thank you very much for watching.